So our keynote speaker is someone who was selected by the class of Indigo. Every year, the class at the beginning of the year talks about who they would like to have come and give the main address. And this year, they've chosen a young man by the name of Chris Bishop. And Chris Bishop is actually a student of Maxwell. He graduated in 1995. And I remember when Chris came to Maxwell in grade 10. Came to the school a little bit reluctant, a little bit resistant, not really sure he wanted to be there. And over the course of 3 years, he just transformed completely. And today, he's a successful business consultant in Texas, married to a lovely wife, Aaliyah, who was also a Maxwell student at one time. And now he is here to share a few words with you about what it means to be a Maxwell student, I hope.
So I'd just like to thank some people. I'd like to thank Dan Vinecourt for being both my vice principal and my boss at different times. I'd like to thank the Maxwell Board for all the work they've done over the years. I'd like to thank the parents of the students for giving us these wonderful faces and these wonderful children, giving us the opportunity to teach them something every now and then. Personally, I'd like to tease them. That was one of my favorite activities. So thank you for that. Thank you to all the staff. As being a member of the staff at one time, I know the sacrifices you've made, so thank you very much for all those sacrifices. And most of all, thanks to the class of 2007. I really appreciate that you guys asked me to come speak to you. Now, let me give you a little bit of background about the role I served as a staff member at Maxwell as a year of service, because it will give you a little vision and insight into this class that is graduating. While I was at Maxwell, I was head of detention. I was the chief punishment. I was also head of the uniform committee. I served on the uniform committee. And I was the enforcer of uniforms. Now, I must say that many of you were good about wearing your uniforms. Some better than others. Some gave me a little bit of trouble. I won't mention any names, but Shaffer knows what he did. When I took over detention, I kind of made some changes. Because the reality of the matter is, anyone who served at Maxwell knows that when you serve there, you have to wear many different hats. And so one of my responsibilities was cleaning the classroom building, including cleaning the toilets and such. And they asked me, hey, can you head up detention? I'm like, sure, but during that time, I'm usually cleaning the classroom building. So if I can get the kids in detention to clean toilets, I will do it. And thus you guys ended up cleaning toilets. So 2 years after that, they invited me back to speak. Which means one of two things. Either this is the most insightful class Maxwell's had in years, or they're gluttons for punishment. I do not know which it is. Perhaps they're seeking revenge. I'm watching my back. But 12 years ago, I sat in these very same seats. I listened to a couple of the very same speakers, and I do not remember a single word. I will be honest with you. The reality of the matter is, you will only remember a speech if it's the greatest one you've ever heard, or the worst one you've ever heard. As much as I wanted to give the worst speech ever, I actually found it easier to create a formula to write the greatest speech ever. So I have 6 elements that make the greatest graduation speech ever. Now I should appreciate this. I did a lot of research for you guys. I actually read about 50 different graduation speeches on the web, thanks to Google. Found some great ones. And so I created this formula. The first key to a great graduation speech is Latin phrases. Now, Dan Nosa, who graduated in the class of '92, he went on to go to Princeton. And when he graduated from Princeton, they had an entire speech in Latin, which was a humorous speech, a comical speech. Although nobody speaks Latin. So you had to sit there and follow it in Latin, and it gave you cues of when to laugh. Now, I will not give my whole speech in Latin, unless there's some Romans in here. Any Romans, raise your hand. But there's an important reason why you have a lot of Latin in graduation speeches. Because in Latin you say, quid, Latin dictum sit, autem sonatar. Which translates to, are you Roman? Which that translates to, whatever is said in Latin sounds profound. So that's the first step of the greatest graduation speech ever. The second are simple truisms. Now you've been hearing a lot of these. I'll give you some examples that you've heard. Keep a positive attitude. Love your family. Love your friends. Live life to the fullest. These little quips, these little sound bites, these simple truisms, you'll find them all over graduation speeches. You'll find them all over this graduation speech. Hopefully mine more interesting than everyone else's. The third element is time prediction. For some reason, when it comes to graduation time, everybody, all your friends and family, particularly the older people older than you, become a prophet. I'll tell you how. They seem to make predictions about your life. They say, these were the best years of your life. The best years of your life are coming right ahead of you. The best years of your life will be 20 years from now when you look back. So these people make prophecies. So I will talk a little bit about time prediction. The fourth element are political quotes. Now, when my mother graduated from high school, she was salutatorian, and her advisor insisted that she use the quote from Franklin Roosevelt, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." Famous quote, we've all heard it at one time or another. Although I beg to differ with Mr. Roosevelt, because I fear spiders. Perhaps we have more to fear than fear itself. The fifth element is a Shakespeare reference. Don't ask me why. People refer to Shakespeare quite frequently in these speeches. Perhaps they will have a quote from Shakespeare such as, "It is not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves." It's a nice quote. But you have to be careful with Shakespeare, because he has a tendency of killing everyone at the end of his plays. This is a graduation, not a funeral. The sixth element and the final element of the greatest graduation speech of all time is brevity. I'm not going to talk very long, because you're not going to remember any of this. I guarantee it. But you can say, authoritatively say, that this is the greatest graduation speech of all time, because that's what I entitled it.